Recently, like many others, I've been playing through Astrobot, and frankly, I've been enjoying every minute of it. That is, until the nightmares came back. Today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be taking a look at the fiery pits of Patapon. And before you go getting all up in arms, what's going on, guys? This is TheLostYeti here, and I'm going to tell you about how I spent my last 2 months. Immediately hit with a wave of nostalgia, we stumble upon what appears to be the lone Patapon survivor, and he presents to us a holy drum. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar with the game, it's with the drums that we actually communicate to our little eyeball army, and this is how we tell them to march, attack, retreat, enact weird voodoo magic and cause an absolute doomsday, but we'll get to that later. Now, more importantly, we're introduced to our priestess Meden, I hope I'm saying that right, who, other than the man with the flagpole, seems to be the only eyeball that can hold intelligent conversation, and she informs us that, well, no army can operate on an empty stomach, so she sends us out to go hunt for food for the troops. Naturally, we go along with it, mainly because we want to see the little eyeball dudes do a little dance. But as anybody could have guessed, any little creature like this has only a dash of insatiable bloodlust. As wasting no time, our cute little eyeballs also ask us to lead them into war. And now, I don't know what the little red eyeballs did. They're known as the Zigatons. I hope I'm also pronouncing that correctly. But the text calls them quote-unquote ruthless. And how could we say no to these little guys? So... And before you know it, our little murder rampage would lead us to our first boss, the Dodonga, a blue dragon-looking guy that spits fire and is the only thing preventing us and our Patapons from reaching Earthend. Right, so I may have slightly embellished the Patapons' actual goal here. Really, they're just little flat earthers who want to see the end of the world and are willing to kill anything that stands in their way. Yeah, I didn't exactly say that the plot was super deep here. And now, before we get too excited for defeating Dodonga, it would probably be a good time to mention that most bosses in this game come in pairs, which means we also need to take on Majdonga, basically just a red variant of the blue dragon that we just fought. Good news is, at least when we beat him, he actually drops our first black magic juju. The magic juju that we collected last week allows us to make it rain on command. And that probably would have been helpful information before we tried to brute force taking on the giant worm boss in the desert that basically killed off all of our troops. But if one thing's for sure, I am slightly stubborn and I was not gonna let a silly worm stand in my way. My secret? Just completely overlevel all of your troops and build out your army far more than you should at this point in the game. Which, when you start unlocking new types of troops, just becomes even more of a joke. You see, I dumped 99% of all the resources I got into just 3 troop types. The Yumpions, which are the little archer dudes, Patapons, the little axe guys, and Yaripons, the spear throwing guys, clearly. And the combination of these 3, in my opinion, is the best team combo you can build in the game. But boy, does this game like to prove me wrong. See, this is about the time that I hit my first real roadblock, thinking that all my troops were truly overleveled, which they were. The rest of this section would be a complete cakewalk. But that would be until I decided to take on one of the Zigaton forts. For whatever reason, it seemed to wipe my team no matter what I would do. Turns out, I just needed another fancy black magic juju, but instead the game let me continue bashing my head into the wall trying to figure this one out. After finally figuring out that the juju was what I was missing, I was able to quickly defeat the fort. as well as 2 additional bosses that didn't put up much of a fight. Thinking that I was on a complete roll, I would then attempt to rescue one of our allies from the evil clutches of Gon, one of the Zigoton army's generals. But silly me for thinking I was anywhere near ready for that. By the 3rd week, I was fully into the swing of things, having unlocked most of the resource grinding minigames. I was able to redo boss fights, try to save up all the special materials, and actually build up my troops to rematch Gong. And although my plan was very well thought out, my grand plan went about as well as you may expect. After many losses to Gong, I did what any sane person would do, and I consulted the wiki. Turns out the key to this fight was to not actually do it the proper way, and to 100% cheese it. What you gotta do is actually retreat away from his troops to isolate Gong, that way you can just focus fire him. And by some miracle, doing this actually allowed me to limp out of the battle with only 1 lone survivor and a sliver of health. But after all the pain I went through on that level, I'll chalk that up as a win. That is, until I returned back to base, only to find that Medan, our priestess, was actually kidnapped. And although, yes, it was tempting to, leave her for dead and not go for her, the better part of me decided, yeah, we should probably save her. She's kind of important. Week 4 started with a quick little boss rush, followed by the moment we've finally been waiting for, our final showdown with General Gong. And for whatever reason, we were really on a roll, so we actually made pretty short work of him. Kinda disappointing after all the trouble he had put us through. We then proceeded to take down a giant crab and learned the beauty of technology when the Zigotons decided to use their new catapult. Having to regroup from our loss, we leveled up on a few more bosses and unlocked the Earthquake Juju, which is probably the most overpowered Juju in the entire game, and the Zigotons' fancy catapult stood no chance as we demolished it using our newfound Juju. But don't worry, because we weren't done there. We then proceeded to also use the Juju to completely eliminate all the Zigoton remaining generals and steal all of their fancy hats. With Earthend finally within our grasp, we press on, fighting not only 1, but 2 fancy man-eating plants to earn our final Juju. This final Juju allows us to unleash our full power of the Patapon onto the Zigoton Queen, who stands no match for our fury. This would only leave the legendary beast Girl in our way. I must say, although the Girl fight was difficult and took me quite a few tries, it's honestly the most satisfying fight in the entire game. It has multiple phases that, although were slightly predictable, made the fight super dynamic and super fun. And with 1 or 2 well-timed strikes, Gruul finally fell to our Patapon army. At long last, we may finally reach Earthend. As we wait at the cliff's edge, hoping to finally catch a glimpse of it, it turns out to be nothing more than the morning sun. And with that, the credits begin to roll. We see the end of our adventure and the tease of what comes in the game's sequel. And I'd be lying if I wasn't to say that it was a little bit bittersweet after all we've been through, but I also can't say that I didn't enjoy the journey it took to get here. Patapon is a really endearing little rhythm game, and although its constant repetition of beating on the drums may still keep me up at night, it's probably my favorite game from the PlayStation Portable. And for those of you who are considering playing it for yourself, don't let its grindy nature get in the way of giving it a chance. I just ask, don't be stubborn like me, and if you actually get stuck, go and consult the game's wiki and thank me later. If you made it this far in the video, please consider leaving a like. This style of video actually takes quite a bit of time for me to put together, and if you like this format, consider checking out my other Do You Remember episodes. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we got time for today. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, this has been your host, TheLostYeti. I hope to catch you guys in the next episode.